Chapter 6, Part 2 of A Wrinkle in Time. Below them, the town was laid out in harsh, angular patterns. The houses in the outskirts were all exactly alike small, square boxes painted gray. Each had a small, rectangular plot of lawn in front, with a straight line of dull looking flowers edging the path to the door. Meg had a feeling that if she could count the flowers, there would be exactly the same number for each house. And in front of all the houses, children were playing. Some were skipping rope, some were bouncing balls. Meg felt vaguely that something was wrong with their play. It seemed exactly like children playing around any house's development at home, and yet there was something different about it. She looked at Calvin and saw that he, too, was puzzled. Look, Charles Wallace said suddenly, they're skipping and bouncing in rhythm. Everyone's doing it at exactly the same moment. This was so. As the skipping rope hit the pavement, so did the ball. As the rope curved over the head of the child with the ball caught the ball. Down came the ropes, down came the balls, over and over again. Up, down, all in rhythm, all alike, like the houses, like the paths, like the flowers. Then the doors of all the houses opened simultaneously, and out came women like a row of paper dolls. The print of their dresses were different, but they all gave the appearance of being the same. Each woman stood on the steps of her house. Each clapped. Each child with the ball caught the ball. Each child with the jumping rope folded the rope. Each child turned and walked into the house. The doors clicked shut behind them. "How can they do it?" Meg asked wonderingly. "We couldn't do it that way if we tried. What does it mean?" "Let's go back." Calvin's voice was urgent. "Back?" Calvin asked. "Where?" "I don't know. Anywhere but back to the hill, back to Mrs. Whatsit and Mrs. Who and Mrs. Which. I don't like this." "But they aren't there. Do you think they'd come to us if we turn back now?" "I don't like it," Calvin said again. "Come on!" Impatience made Meg squeak. "You know we can't go back. Mrs. Whatsit said to go into town." She started on down the street, and the two boys followed her. The houses, all identical, continued as far as the eye could reach. Then, all at once, they saw the same thing and stopped to watch. In front of one of the houses stood a little boy with a ball, and he was bouncing it. But he bounced it rather badly and with no particular rhythm, sometimes dropping it and running after it with awkward, furtive leaps, sometimes throwing it up in the air and trying to catch it. The door of his house opened, and out ran one of the mother figures. She looked wildly up and down the street, saw the children, and put her hand to her mouth as though to stifle a scream, grabbed the little boy, and rushed indoors with him. The ball dropped from his fingers and rolled out onto the street. Charles Wallace ran after it and picked it up, holding it out for Meg and Calvin to see. It seemed like a perfectly ordinary brown rubber ball. "Let's take it to him and see what happens," Charles Wallace suggested. Meg pulled at him. "Mrs. Whatsit said for us to go into the town." "Well, we are all in the town, aren't we? The outskirts, anyhow. I want to know more about this. I have a hunch it may help us later. You go on if you don't want to come with me." "No," Calvin said firmly. "We're going to stay together. Mrs. Whatsit said we weren't to let them separate us. But I'm with you on this. Let's knock and see what happens." They went up to the path to the house, Meg reluctant, eager to get into town. "Let's hurry," she begged. "Please, don't you want to find father?" "Yes," Charles Wallace said, "but not blindly. How can we save him if we don't know what we're up against? And it's obvious we've been brought here to help him, not just to find him." He walked briskly up the steps and knocked at the door. They waited. Nothing happened. Then Charles Wallace saw a bell, and this he rang. They could hear the bell buzzing in the house, and the sound of it echoed down the street. After a moment the mother figure opened the door. All up and down the street other doors opened, but only a crack, and eyes peered toward the three children and the woman looking fearfully out at the door at them. "What do you want?" she asked. "It isn't paper time yet. We've had milk time. We've had this month's pull or brush person, and I've given my decency donations regularly. All my papers are in order." "I think your little boy dropped his ball," Charles Wallace said, holding it out. The woman pushed it away. "Oh, no, the children in our section never drop balls. They're all perfectly trained. We haven't had an aberration for 3 years." All up and down the block, heads nodded in agreement. Charles Wallace moved closer to the woman and looked past her into the house. Behind her in the shadows he could see that the little boy, who must have been about his own age. "You can't come in," the woman said. "You haven't shown me any papers. I don't have to let you in if you haven't any papers." Charles Wallace held the ball out beyond the woman so that the little boy could see it. Quick as a flash, the boy leaped forward and grabbed the ball from Charles Wallace's hand, then darted back into the shadows. The woman went very white, opened her mouth as though to say something, then slammed the door in their faces instead. All up and down the street, doors slammed. "What are they afraid of?" Charles Wallace asked. "What's the matter with them?" "Don't you know?" Meg asked him. "Don't you know what this is all about, Charles?" "Not yet," Charles Wallace said. "Not even an inkling, and I'm trying, but I didn't get through anywhere, not even a chink. Let's go." He stumped down the steps. After several blocks, the houses gave way to apartment buildings. At least, Meg felt sure that that was what they must be. They were fairly tall, rectangular buildings, absolutely plain, each window, each entrance exactly like every other. Then, coming toward them down the street was a boy about Calvin's age riding a machine that was something like a combination of a bicycle and a motorcycle. It had the slimness and lightness of a bicycle, and yet, as the foot pedals turned, they seemed to generate an unseen source of power, so that the boy could pedal very slowly and yet move along the street quite swiftly. As he reached each entrance, he thrust one hand into the bag he wore slung over his shoulder, pulled out a roll of papers, and tossed it to the entrance. It might have been Denny's or Sandy or any one of hundreds of boys with a newspaper route in any one of hundreds of towns back home. And yet, as the children playing ball and jumping rope, there was something wrong about it. The rhythm of the gesture never varied. The paper flew in identically the same arc at each doorway, landed in identically the same spot. It was impossible for anyone to throw with such consistent perfection. Calvin whistled. "Wonder if they play baseball here." As the boy saw them, he slowed down on his machine and stopped, his hand arrested as it was about to plunge into the paper bag. "What are you kids doing out on the street?" he demanded. "Only route boys are allowed out now. You know that." No, we don't know it," Charles Wallace said. "We're strangers here. How about telling us something about this place?" You mean you've had your entrance papers processed and everything?" the boy asked. "You must have if you're here," he answered himself. "And what are you doing here if you don't know about us?" "You tell me," Charles Wallace said. "Are you examiners?" the little boy asked anxiously. "Everybody knows our city has the best central intelligence center on the planet. Our production levels are the highest. Our factories never close. Our machines never stop rolling. Added to this, we have 5 poets, 1 musician, 3 artists, and 6 sculptors, all perfectly channeled." "What are you quoting from?" Charles Wallace asked. "The manual, of course," the boy said. "We are the most oriented city on the planet. There has been no trouble of any kind for centuries. All Camazotz knows our record. That is why we are the capital city of Camazotz. That is why Central Intelligence is located here. That is why it makes its home here." There was something about the way that he said "it" that made a shiver run up and down Meg's spine. But Charles Wallace asked briskly, "Where is this Central Intelligence Center of yours?" Central, the boy corrected. "Just keep going. You can't miss it. You are strangers, aren't you? What are you doing here?" "Are you supposed to ask questions?" Charles Wallace demanded severely. The boy went white, just as the woman had. "I humbly beg your pardon. I must continue my route now, or I will talk my timing into the explainer." And he shot off down the street on his machine. Charles Wallace stared after him. "What is it?" he asked Meg and Charles. There was something funny about the way he talked, as though he weren't really doing the talking. Know what I mean? Calvin nodded thoughtfully. "Funny is right. Funny peculiar. Not only the way he talked either. The whole thing smells." "Come on," Meg pulled at them. How many times was it that she had urged them on? "Let's go find father. He'll be able to explain it all to us." They walked on. After several more blocks, they began to see other people, grown up people, not children, walking up and down and across the streets. These people ignored the children entirely, seeming to be completely intent on their own business. Some of them went into the apartment buildings, most of them were headed in the same direction as the children. As these people came into the main street from the side streets, they would swing around the corners with an odd, automatic stride, as though they were so deep in their own problems and the route was so familiar that they didn't have to pay any attention to where they were going. After a while, the apartment buildings gave way to what must have been office buildings, great stem structures with enormous entrances. Men and women with briefcases poured in and out. Charles Wallace went up to one of the women, saying politely, "Excuse me, But could you please tell me?" But she hardly glanced at him as she continued on her way. "Look," Meg pointed. Ahead of them, across the square, was the largest building they had ever seen, higher than the Empire State Building, and almost as long as it was high. "This must be it," Charles Wallace said. "Their Central Intelligence, whatever it is. Let's go on." "But if Father's in some kind of trouble with this planet," Meg objected, "isn't that exactly where we shouldn't go?" "Well, how do you propose finding him?" Charles Wallace demanded. "Well, I certainly wouldn't ask there." "I didn't say anything about asking, but we aren't going to have the faintest idea where or how to begin to look for him till we find out something more about this place, and I have a hunch that that's the place to start. If you have a better idea, Meg, why, of course, just say so." "Oh, get off your high horse," Meg said crossly. "Let's go to your Central Intelligence and get it over with." "I think we ought to have passports or something," Calvin suggested. "This is much more than leaving America to go to Europe, and that boy and the woman both seem not to care so much about having things in proper order. We certainly haven't got any papers in proper order." "If we needed passports or paper, Mrs. Watson would have told us so," Charles Wallace said. Calvin put his hands on his hips and looked down at Charles Wallace. "Now look here, old sport. I love those three old girls just as much as you do, but I'm not sure that they know everything. They know a lot more than we do." "Granted. But you know Mrs. Whatsit talked about having been a star. I wouldn't think that being a star would give her much practice in knowing about people. When she tried to be a person, she came pretty close to goofing it up. Was never anybody on land or sea like Mrs. Whatsit, the way she got herself up." "She was just having fun," Charles said. "If she'd wanted to look like you or Meg, I'm sure she could have." Calvin shook his head. "I'm not so sure. And these people seem to be people, if you know what I mean. They aren't like us, I grant you that. But there's something very offbeat about them. But there's lots more, but they're lots more like ordinary people than the ones on Uriel." "Do you suppose they're robots?" Meg suggested. Charles Wallace shook his head. "No, that boy who dropped the ball wasn't any robot, and I don't think the rest of them are either. Let me listen for a minute." They stood very still, side by side, in the shadow of one of the big office buildings. 6 large doors kept swinging, open, shut, as people went in and out, looking straight ahead, paying no attention to the children whatsoever. Charles wore his listening, probing look. "They're not robots," he said suddenly and definitely. "I'm not sure what they are, but they're not robots. I can feel minds there. I can't get at them at all, but I can feel them sort of pulsing. Let me try a minute more." The three of them stood there very quietly. The doors kept opening and shutting, and the stiff people hurried in and out, walking jerkily like figures in an old silent movie. Then abruptly the stream of movement thinned. There were only a few people, and these moved more rapidly, as if the film had been speeded up. One white-faced man in a dark suit looked directly at the children and said, "Oh dear, I shall be late," and flickered into the building. "He's like the White Rabbit," Meg giggled nervously. "I'm scared," Charles said. "I can't reach them at all. I'm completely shut out." "We have to find Father," Meg started again. "Meg," Charles Wallace's eyes were wide and frightened. "I'm not sure I'll even know Father. It's been so long, and I was only a baby." Meg's reassurance came quickly. "You'll know him. Of course you'll know him. The way you'd know me without even looking, because I'm always there with you. You can always reach in." "Yes!" Charles punched one small fist into an open palm with a gesture of great decision. "Let's go to Central Intelligence." Calvin reached out and caught both Charles and Meg by the arm. "You remember when we met and you asked me why I was there? And I told you it was because I had a compulsion, a feeling I just had to come to that particular place at that particular moment?" "Yes, sure. I've got another feeling, not the same kind, a different one. A feeling that if we go into that building, we're going into terrible danger."